So welcome everybody. It's great to have you here. So tonight we are looking at 3 from a trauma-informed perspective, looking at the heart wounds, some of the ways in which the type develops as a compensation for deficits in the early holding environment. And then I'm going to hand over to Robert Hutchinson. Rob, do you want to unmute yourself? Robert's an Egyptologist, a symbologist, and he's going to be sharing with us about ancient Egyptian spirituality and the goddess at point 3, Hwt-Horu or Hathor. And then Sam, if you'll also unmute yourself, Samantha's got a business called The Soul Shed. She does the most beautiful creative process facilitation. And they are my very special guests tonight for this TAKDÍR Dialogos session. So maybe Sam, you can introduce yourself first, and then Rob, and then I'll get started with my piece.
Sure. Hello, it's really nice to be here. I'm in freezing cold England, and it's the end of a very grey day, and this is a bit of a highlight for me. Very much looking forward to connecting around these things together. This is the 3rd one of these sessions in the inner triangle that Ingrid and Rob and myself have offered. So in a way, it's an integration of 2 other points that we've been at, 9 and 6. Ingrid, you mentioned, what do I like best about the Enneagram as a good way of introducing myself? And I was thinking about that in the last 10 minutes or so. And for me, this capacity that we have for pattern recognition is a very human-y thing. Entering into the world of symbol and drawing meaning from symbol, and then making those correspondences with bigger picture things and very, very intimate things, and joining all those dots, I think I find very, very satisfying. I'm a type 6, so there's a lot of that happens in my brain. But actually, the deeper place it happens for me is the correspondences I can then make with my body in the world and in my heart space, actually. So the correspondences with nature, it's a love that I share with Petra. A lot of Petra's work takes place in the natural world, in the wild, and exploring our relationship with where we are in our corner of the globe is a powerful place of belonging to explore. So the Enneagram has actually enabled me to do that, to draw those correspondences in much deeper ways than I would have been able to without it. So that's my deepest point of gratitude, I think, for the Enneagram.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for opening us to that way of seeing it. Thank you. And I'm going to hand over to Rob, if you can introduce yourself, Rob. And the same question, what do you love most about the Enneagram?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm here in London, also in England, and been really enjoying this series with Ingrid and Sam. And we have offline conversations which are very interesting and creative and inspiring. So this is the combination of those conversations that we're having behind the scenes. So I'm an Enneagram coach and teacher and a Egyptian symbologist. And I haven't talked previously to Sam about that question, what do we love about the Enneagram? But I was already preparing to say what I love about the Enneagram is the symbol. It is endlessly illuminating and inspiring. You know, I think we all, a lot of us get very interested in the typology, and the symbol has so much to offer in terms of the Enneagram of personality and typology, but also so much more about cosmology, about the way the universe works, about the way the earth works, about the way nature works, about the way societies work, about the way that processes unfold. And I think really the big gift of the Enneagram for me has been when, for me, Enneagram, Egyptology, and the earth came together. And when I put those three together, that provides me with that why that we were invited to think about in the meditation just then. I'll speak a bit more in my section about the Egyptian symbology, but what the symbology through Egypt, what it brings the Enneagram alive for me. In a way that books can't, and text can't, and other methodologies can't. And I've learned so much more through the Egyptian symbology that's allowed me to understand the Enneagram. And the Enneagram allows me to understand Egyptian symbology. So it comes full circle. And so I'll be sharing more about that in my section. But yeah, love the Enneagram, love the symbology, love the connection with Egypt. And then just on a practical level, you know, what learning about the Enneagram has done for my own self-awareness and my ability to kind of understand and interact with other people professionally and personally. It's been a revelation. So that's me, and that's my favorite aspect of the Enneagram. And I look forward to speaking a bit later about the point 3 and the Egyptian symbology.
Thank you, Rob. It's so cool to hear these things because I've never asked either of you that question before. And it's just so lovely to hear because it helps us to relate to the Enneagram differently, to see it differently, and to, you know, see the potential for using it in new ways. For me, if I answer that question, I used to think the phrase that Gurdjieff said, the symbol is the Enneagram is the symbol of all and everything. I thought, what a lot of nonsense. But the more I work with it, the more I realize that it is a brilliant framework to bring other things to. Like Sam was saying and Rob was saying, the symbol illuminates other things and other things illuminate the symbol. So I've got a background in comparative religion studies. The Enneagram helps me understand Sufism, Kabbalah, Christian mysticism, aspects of Buddhism. It helped me to understand when I went with Rob walking around the temples in Egypt. So the Enneagram unlocks meaning in other traditions. And similarly to Rob and Sam, I've studied a lot of traumatology, trauma science, and bringing that to the Enneagram has really helped me understand type as a reality strategy, as an adaptation, as a defense. So I want to talk more about that today, like the development of type and what the Enneagram 3 type is about. It's kind of inner logic. And then I'm going to hand over to Rob to look at the Egyptian piece. And then Sam's going to take us through a practice, a creative practice. So let me start there. I've got some slides. If I can just find them. Hold on a minute. Would have quit something. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what we've got here is a picture with a pearl in the middle. And this card comes from a deck of cards by a woman called Kim Krantz, and it's a card of archetypes, a deck of beautiful archetypes. And this is the picture that she has for the card of the self. And Almas is the one who speaks about the pearl as something that is our true identity. And you know that pearls are formed through friction. And in the Enneagram, in the inner triangle, it's the friction between essence and ego, between manifestation and opposition, that leads to the grace of our unfolding as a human being and the development of the pearl of our true identity. So I wanted to use that image, and I want to start off with some of the essence qualities of 3, because the loss of contact with essence is really how our personality comes to be so needed, because each type has got a particular sensitivity to a certain essential quality. And when we lose touch with that quality, it's experienced as such a deep loss that we have to compensate for it. We have to try and manufacture that quality somehow in our lives. So I invite you just to have a look at this slide and read it for yourselves. You can read faster than I can talk. And just notice what happens to your nervous system as you read these words. So just notice what happened reading that. There's a philosopher who speaks about seeing as becomes being as. And when we learn to see the world in a particular way, or when we open to seeing it in a new way, we actually open our being to experience it in a new way. And that applies to the way we look at ourselves as well. That we can change our way of seeing ourselves, which gives rise to a new way of inner experience. So that's what these Enneagram teachings are designed to do, to interrupt our normal thought patterns and to allow us to find a way into a different experience through the training of our awareness to get out of our usual thought loops. So really here, just noticing the massive difference between this and the stereotype of Enneagram 3s. And that's really the point, is that this is what a 3 is, essentially. An Enneagram 3 is a person who knows this deep down. And it almost has privileged contact with this element of being. Urania always said, and many of you will have heard me say this 100 times, that the Enneagram point 3 as the heart of the heart center has a very special connection to God. And I like to remember that. You know, if I'm working with corporates and people are very identified with their ego image, I'm going to try and see this when you look at an Enneagram 3, that this is what they're longing for. This is what they want, because some part of them knows it, and some part of all of us knows it too, because we all have a heart. We've got 3 centers. We've got our mental center, or whatever our mental center fixation or style is. We've all got a heart, and we've all got a moving body and a gut center with power. So this is what a 3 is longing to feel. And I'm going to play the Sleeping at Last song for 3. These songs are truly brilliant, and you can listen to them many, many times because they were created with on the basis of a lot of interviews with people of that type. So the words are very carefully chosen. So pay careful attention to the words and notice anything that particularly touches you in the song. Notice any moment that affects your heart or that moves you. I used to cry every time I listened to these songs for every single type. But I'm managing not to cry now because I've kind of accustom myself a little bit. So I'm going to play this now. We're just going to listen to it.
Maybe I've done enough, and your golden child grew up. Maybe this trophy isn't real love, and with or without it I'm good enough. Maybe I've done enough, finally catching up. For the first time I see an image of my brokenness, utterly worthy of love. Maybe I've done enough. And I finally see myself through the eyes of no one else. It's so exhausting on this silver screen, where I play the role of anyone but me. And I finally see myself unabridged and overwhelmed, a mess of a story I'm ashamed to tell. But I'm slowly learning how to break this spell. And I finally see myself. Now I only want what's real, to let my heart feel what it feels. Gold, silver, bronze hold no value here, where work and rest are equally revered. I only want what's real. I set aside the highlight reel and leave my greatest failures on display, with an asterisk worthy of love anyway.
So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, if that's okay, and for you to share about what touched your heart in listening to that song. Was there anything special that stood out for you? Any new way of seeing the threes in your world or relating to yourself? If you're a three, you've got a three wing or a 1 to 3. So let me do that. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you got to share from your hearts. Let me carry on with my piece.
Ingrid, can I say one quick thing?
Hmm?
Our group, we showed up, myself, Karina, and Petra, and we were talking about it really moved us and da 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 da. And then at the end, I shared I'm a 4, Karina's a 4, Petra is a 4. So we had this huge conglomeration of 4 emotion. Did you do that deliberately?
I did not. And also, I was wrong about the crying bit. I did actually start crying during the song. I think it's a good sign. I've got a Dropbox link to a folder with all of those songs, so I can share it if I remember. I'll try. Let me write it down. Okay, so that introduced us to some of the core themes. The trophy is not real love. The eyes of no one else. Me in the eyes of no one else. And that's one of the things that's a really big deal for Enneagram 3s, is constructing themselves as if other people are watching. And that's true of all the heart types, the image types. The 3 corners called the image corner, because it's the curation or the construction of an image through the imagined eyes of others, according to what those types think is going to get them love. So let's just go back to this essence quality, because this is what 3s are trying to recover through all their strategies. They disconnected from authentic presence and value. So the essence quality of 3 is value. So with the sincerity and genuineness, they start to realize what they really are, and that their contact with the present moment as themselves, as a being that cannot actually be described, that cannot be branded or labeled, or it's an essential spiritual quality or substance, our true being. And when 3s get in touch with that as themselves, then they experience this deep fulfillment, that they're coming from the inside out. They're not trying to get anything from the outside. And that's actually true for all of us, that when we become a source of love and goodness and value from deep within, and we are generating those qualities rather than looking for them. In the 7's case, it's grasping for fulfillment externally. For 3s, it's wanting applause, wanting positive regard, wanting congratulations. So all the types are trying to elicit something from outside. And 3s are particularly sensitive to this quality of, who am I really? And when 3s get in touch with the sense of that deep within, then just showing up has got such a quality of enoughness, that need for validation starts to really fall away. And that's where trauma healing comes in, is when we experience ourselves as safely embodied in the present moment, here and now. Then we're able to come from an inner directed place with the courage to be, to just be, to not perform, to not effort, to not strive, to not please. So Paul Tillich, a famous theologian, wrote a book called The Courage to Be. And if you're in the inner triangle, that's probably a great book for you, because it's about this, the courage to be and not be driven by doing and earning and seeking and grabbing and grasping, which is what our ego does, because our ego is trying to manufacture this quality, but the best it can come up with is a kind of fake version. It can get you a trophy, but it can't manufacture real love, because that comes from the ground of being. So that's the spiritual dimension of it. From a trauma perspective, it's about feeling a sense of being welcome, held, experiencing attunement in your early caregiving environment that gives us a sense of being valued and held. And that's particularly 3's deficit is in unconditional positive regard and attunement, as we'll see. So here's another Almas quote about value. And it's quite beautiful because he speaks about being here precisely, which I really love. So it's not about imagining, fabricating in our heads an idea of mindfulness, an idea of presence. It truly is in our 3 centers, as Petra showed us, on the soles of our feet, oriented in space and time, connected to this one unique life that is ours, our unique subjective unfolding that is essentially identityless and utterly unique. But it's unique because of the here and now that is us. There's a beautiful quote I noticed earlier. I've got this big collage. It says here, what each must seek in his life or her life, what never was on land or sea. It is something out of his or her own unique potentiality for experience, something that never has been and never could have been experienced by anyone else. So not another person in the history of existence has been living in your body on the soles of your feet right now, breathing with your lungs, living with your heartbeat, and experiencing this moment that has never been before. So that's valuing, that's knowing the uniqueness of this. And there's no need to create an identity when we're in touch with that quality of the value of our own beingness. So that really applies to all of the image types. And it's a value beyond mind, concepts, ideals, all of it. So let's talk about what happens when 3s get overwhelmed and dysregulated, and when they're triggered, and from infancy when they experience misattunement. This is the trance of type state. And I use Peter Levine's pentagram, the SIBAM model, SIBAM, to break out what is the inner experience of each of the types when they're triggered in the trance of type, and then when they're in the state of presence and groundedness in the here and now. So I've been doing research for the last few years for a thesis, and part of what I've been doing is asking people about their experiences when you're in the trance of your type, and when you feel that sense of being in that inner witnessing eye. And the trauma discourse around that is when you have the window of tolerance, there's a kind of buffer zone, you feel regulated, you feel a sense of inner organization. Your feelings can come and go, but they don't overwhelm you. External events, you can handle them with a sense of the virtues. If you're a 4, it's equanimity. If you're a 3, you can handle it with authenticity and veracity. You don't feel a need to perform to compensate for something that's gone wrong. So these are the comparative states. And in Christianity, in Christian mysticism, it would be called desolation and consolation. And we're always oscillating between the two. We have a good day, we have a bad day. And gradually, as we undergo a spiritual transformation process and the ego starts relaxing, we start feeling safely embodied. We start spending a little bit more time in this state. We might only have experienced it once in the last 10 years before we've done any inner work. But what the inner work is healing and capacitating and resourcing ourselves to be able to spend more and more time here. And when we're here, if you look at these wonderful, beautiful qualities of this state on the right, you can see how liberated this state is from the entrapment of the trance of type. So the entrapment of our type shuts down options, it constricts us, we kind of paint ourselves into a corner. Whereas when we're present, many more possibilities open to us. So if you just look at these, I just summarized all the metaphors and phrases into a bit of a narrative. So in the 3 trance, the meaning corner is very much identified with the ego type. And when people look back on this time in their life, they speak about their worth being tied to their accomplishments. And in the present state, there's a much deeper self-acceptance. There's not that desperation for affirmation and approval. It's okay if not everyone likes my work. That's fine. I'm showing up from my heart, and I'm here, and I'm doing my best, and I care, and my love and care is being brought into the space. And then if people don't like it, or they aren't ready for it, or whatever, it's not really my job to interfere with that. That's their journey, and I'm offering something. And feeling deeply confident with what one is bringing into a space. So that's the big difference. And the transitive type is characterized by a disconnection in this model. So when we feel grounded and present, we've got our sensations, we're in contact with our body, we can notice our thoughts spinning and we can put them aside. We can feel our hearts, their feelings going on. We're able to think intentionally, how do I want to show up and behave in this situation? So we're not compelled. Like we have a thought and then we behave. We have a feeling and then we do something. Our sensations trigger. So this is a state of triggering, where one thing triggers another, and our experience isn't coherent and regulated. So the trauma discourse really helps us understand the difference between states. This is where work like Petra's work comes in, is working somatically to establish a sense of inner organization, balance, solidity, all of these wonderful qualities that you then hear as words in the virtues. So that's what we're doing. And what 3s end up having to do is an inner confrontation. At some point, they are going to confront the experience of inner emptiness. And because life brings us opportunities to give up our old ways of being. And everybody has the choice of whether to turn down those opportunities or not. But this is the nature of the 3 inner confrontation. So 3 realizes that they've been identified with their image of success, and then there's a realization of the immense cost of that identification. The fact that it's driven me to workaholism, it's driven me to neglect my important relationships, my most important relationships. I've so prioritized getting the trophy that I've forgotten about all the things of true value. And there's a sense of inner emptiness that arises from that the song was really pointing us to. So I've been so busy chasing approval that I feel this emptiness. And there are so many things that give rise to this chasing of approval, to this go, 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 go. I've got to get the next success. I've got to look good. I've got to win. I've got to achieve. I've got to do that thing. And these are all of the factors that contribute to the development of the strategy to get us what we think is going to fill that need that we're looking for. So it's biopsychosocial. They're genetics, epigenetics, temperament, and neurophysiology. And then they're all of the developmental things from there onwards. And the Enneagram gives us very good language, and it maps them very nicely in terms of the heart wounds, object relations, all the triads that the Enneagram gives us describe the developmental influences in childhood. And for 3, the main one here is the lost childhood message. The 3 did not get the message, you are loved for yourself. And I don't mean that explicitly and verbally. I mean it in a tacit way, in a non-verbal way, chronically, day after day after day. This sense, maybe, probably the parent really adored the child, but because of the parents' misattunement or their own Enneagram type, like say the child has an Enneagram 7 mother who's very chaotic and self-involved and, externally busy and not in touch with her heart, then she's not going to be there for this 3 baby in the way that makes the 3 feel held and loved. So, not trashing the parents, not blaming the parents. If you've got a 3 child, this is not a criticism and it's not trashing. We all have an Enneagram type, and our parents also had Enneagram types. But the point is, a 3 has got a sense of a deficit of worth, and especially of their feelings. So in my post about tonight, I put a thing where, one of the 3s says, if she cried as a child, the parent says, go to the bathroom and wash off that ugly face. So your feelings and the real you aren't welcome. So that's what we're talking about. And when you feel like the real you and your actual feelings aren't welcome, you better get some other feelings and a different look on your face so that you'll retain the attachment. Another very sad story that I heard from a 3 was that she was going for extra maths lessons so that she could, shoot the lights out at maths. And she used to get 98%. And her mother would say, what happened to the other 2%? And she went for extra math lessons. And the guy was sexually abusing her. And she didn't tell her mother because she didn't want to disappoint her. So that's the extent of the self-abandonment that can happen when you feel, I've got to make these people happy by being the best, by achieving. Another client in an Enneagram workshop in a corporate said, when I'd taken them through the Enneagram, he said with tears in his eyes, he said his child was crying when he put him to bed because, and he asked the child, what's wrong? And the child said, I don't think I'll ever be good enough. And he meant for the dad's standards. The dad was an Enneagram 1. And this child was expressing the sense of, no, I can't do it. I'm not that person that you want me to be. And he had a big wake-up call. It was actually quite beautiful and tender. So we're talking about this heart wound, which is the empty heart. And the empty heart looks like this. It's the experience of inner emptiness that is a sense of nothingness. So for 3s, this heart wound can feel very scary. And they start saying things like, oh, woo-woo, I don't do feelings. You'll hear in corporates when you work with 3s, they say, I don't do feelings. 1 3 said, feelings create frictional drag. Like, why have feelings? They're a waste of time. They don't help anyone to do anything. And all they do is get in the way. And 3s will often see feelings as something that they need to just get over. Like if they're doing a project, I'm talking to 3 clients and he's got a huge project he needs to deliver. And he's asking me, okay, so how do I get buy-in? He's not really thinking about those human beings as people who have feelings about the project and who have things to contribute. He's like, he wants to get them on board with the agenda. They're like a means to an end. He's got to move them around like pawn pieces to get somewhere. So not realizing how important feelings are, that genuine allyship and genuine collaboration comes from caring about each other and valuing, there's that word again, valuing what we can do together. Like, wow, we can do something amazing together. And 3s forget that that's what we're doing. They forget. It's not on their radar that how much that is a thing. So that leads to this emptiness eventually. And the trophy isn't real love. And so the familiar patterns, the autopilot that 3 keeps on, think, do, think, do, think, do, not stopping to feel, just that human doing, not a human being, does not fill the heart. And the only way that we really grow and have a rich interior life is by life touching our heart, transforming us in subtle ways, and being attuned to our own heart of what's happening to my heart, how am I changing and growing. So that's really what this empty heart is about. And when 3s start to be able to tap into the heart wound and just feel it and tolerate it through that emotional regulation, through that ability to be in their body in the here and now, then they have that experience that I posted about earlier. Realize it's not empty at all. It is vast and deep and real and connected to everything and the source of love. So when 3s are able to feel into that heart wound and realize that they've kind of done it to themselves, the way we all do our type to ourselves, and they're perpetuating an early childhood deficit, then they start being able to find what they really need to reconnect with this essential quality. So in terms of the type dynamics, I know I'm running a little bit over, Rob, but luckily we've got a bit of extra time today, so I'm not going to panic about it. I hope you aren't. You cool? Good. So this is how the kind of dynamic works. So where 3s are avoiding the feeling of failure, which they are convinced is, going to cause them disconnection, the shame, the loss of love, the loss of connection, they're in attachment to. So they're avoiding that at all costs. And the way that they do that is they seek esteem and affirmation, they achieve amazing things. Deceit here, Russ Hudson changed that to self-deception, and that's way more accurate because 3s are telling themselves what to be instead of contacting themselves and finding out what they are. So just replace that word in your mind, deceit. These are the old names from Ichazo. Self-deception is what we're looking at in 3. So it's a form of self-abandonment. It's like my real feelings and my real experience is irrelevant. I'm just going to do that thing because that thing's where the success is. That's where I'm going to get success through appearances, through other people's eyes. So I'm going to figure out what other people want to see. What's the most amazing thing in this environment? And that's the chameleon thing. So 3s can go into one context and meet everyone's expectations. Then they go into another context, meet different expectations. So it's externally oriented. So this is kind of the 3 image: workaholic, on the go, best job, excellence, awards, do incredible things, have these resumes that you just can't believe, slick image, all of that. We all know the stereotype of the 3 exterior. And no, there's not much new on this slide. There's a kind of identification with the image and then marketing the image. So I'm not really here as me. I'm kind of marketing my image. Believe this, do this, like a billboard almost. And emotion that is expressed is calculated as whether or not it's enhancing that image. So there's a disconnection from our own inner emotional experience. So everything's strategic in terms of achieving the objective of the trophy that is a proxy for love. This is a screenshot from the Euphoria report on 3. And most of the reports display the type at the average levels of health, which are the middle 3. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the middle 3 levels. So this is when threes are identified with their image, they're driving and they're chasing that success. You'll all know, you know, threes that you coach or in your environment that are doing the thing. Russ Hudson says we're at level 4 on our average day. So most of us are at level 4 on an average day. I've got these for all the types, but this is just 3. And then these are the levels just enlarged a little bit. So that state when a 3 is at level 1, experiencing who they are from the inside out, and in the light of grace, like Richard Rohr speaks about, we start experiencing ourselves in the gaze of the divine, reflected. And it's not what we thought we were. So that's when we're in level 1, is all of this, all of the shenanigans and the circus of our type don't feel necessary anymore. And I invite you to spot Donald Trump. You can put in the chat what level you think he's at. This thing might have too few levels to accommodate him. But yeah, so these are the levels. This average, most of us are in the average range. Okay. And then these are the subtypes. I just want to give you a sense of the subtypes. There's some key words here of self-praise, sexual, and social. And these mind maps are at lower levels of health. So it's at 6 and 7. So you've got to be even-handed with the types. If you're comparing types, compare them all at level 2 or 3 or 4 so that you're even-handed. Otherwise, you're going to, you know, if your X is an unhealthy social 3, then you're going to talk about the 3 at this level, but you have a nice friend who's a 2 and you're going to talk about the 2 at that level. So just be aware what level information is pitched at so that you're fair. Met someone on Facebook the other day and she was saying, I've never met a 3 who didn't have narcissistic personality disorder. I was like, whoa, no, sorry. That is so not even-handed. But here you see some of the things. The self-praise is outlined because that is the counter type. So wanting to be a really good person, self-reliant. So they're still seeking success, but just in different ways. The stereotypical 3 is more the social 3, looking for prestige, name dropping, trying to be important, having a big brand, those kinds of things as a substitute for love.
Ingrid, we need a time check, please.
Sure. Cool. I'm gonna finish off soon. So one other thing, just the triads, attachment triad. So wanting to keep love, assertiveness, that's going after what you want. And the 135, the strategy for getting there is competency. Get on with it, be effective, and hyper efficiency. Efficiency is actually known as the trap of 3s. The defense mechanism of identification is wanting to be that, identifying with that ego and not being in touch with myself, not being in touch with the heart wounds, not being in touch with the story that has shame attached to it, or worthlessness or pain. I already touched on this. This is what we need to trust. In my work, and in like Jungian psychology, it's go with the symptom. Where there's unease, where there's disconnection, pain, what is it telling you? What is the message? It's telling you something's not right. So you don't try and get rid of those feelings. You interview them and you ask them, okay, let's go and find out what you're telling me. So I dealt with this a little bit, sorry. Remaining present. For all of the types, becoming safely embodied in the here and now is how we heal, how we become regulated, and have a sense of inner organization that actually allows our three centers to be here, allows our heart to open. We're not defending ourselves, we're not resisting. So that's really what I wanted to put out there. And maybe we can have a little question or two in between, and then Rob can go. Before I hand over, I just want to remind you, I've got some courses starting in March. The one is trauma-informed Enneagram coaching, and that's the 5D model, which is defining the change, guiding the process of discovery, techniques and tools to bring about change, lots of healing modalities come in there, and then how to facilitate with the client the discovery of new dimensions of being in their lives. And the foundation of the program is developing depth of presence with the client. And that means sometimes putting the Enneagram behind you and not seeing them at all through the lens of type. So if you're interested in this program, let me know. And then I've got a team dynamics program also starting in March. If you want to do 5D, you get a 50% discount on this one. It's one of the 5D alumni benefits. So this is all about how to facilitate with the Enneagram in teams. And there it's tri-type and instincts. So I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions arising from what I just shared that are kind of really, you really want to ask them right now? I'm going to only give a couple of minutes because Rob and Sam still have to do their thing. So anyone got something that really stood out for you that you'd like to raise? You're very welcome. Comfortable? Or just shy? Nadine, you gave me substantial input on that. Was there anything there that resonated with you or that you'd like to comment on?
It's the song. For me, it's the song. I still resonating with the song. I can see myself, my eyes. That's so
Yeah.
life-changing.
Yeah, very, very beautiful. Anyone else want to say anything? Anything that touched you from what you've heard about threes? Any new perspectives that you've got on three? No one right now? Okay. We can discuss later when we've got a bit of a Q&A at the end, and we'll switch off the recording for that. So cool. Okay, Rob, I'm going to hand over to you and we can enter the wondrous realm of ancient Egypt.
Right. I just want to check with everybody. We might go over a little bit. Is that okay? Does anyone have a problem and have to leave at the top of the hour for a hard stop? Okay.
So we've got the until past until the Q&A, haven't we?
Yeah.
I've got to leave at past, but fine until then.
That's
Okay.
great. We can just extend your practice a bit into after 9, and then we can have the last 15 minutes, say, of debriefing your exercise and reflections.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay. Go ahead,
so,
Rob.
yeah. Get set up. There we go. So we're here at the true nature of point 3. So as always, there we go. So I always start with this slide, and we were talking about the symbol earlier. Gurdjieff says the Enneagram is the fundamental hieroglyph of a universal language. And it really speaks to the vastness of what we're able to access through the Enneagram. And as I was saying earlier, it's typology, but it's a lot more than that. So here we've got the 3 centers, and we did 0.9, we did 0.6, now we're at 0.3. Each of those primary points is a defining point for the overall center that point sits in. So we put Ma'at, the principle of Ma'at, we put that at 9. That is the principle of balance and of harmony. Very, very important in Egyptian society. They didn't have any notions, as we do, of growth and the sort of change that we have that is really damaging to mental health and damaging to the earth. They were sensible. They understood that a stable environment was a healthy environment. And that applies to society, but it also applies to us as a person. We need a stability as a person. We need balance as a person. So we put Ma'at at 9. That's cosmic order. It's the order of the universe. It's huge. This is a big, big concept. And then at 6, we put Jehuti, also known as Thoth. This is the principle of intellect. So it's where we put knowledge, we put information, we put problems. It's words, it's speech, it's numbers and measurement and time. So all of those principles go over at 0.6. And then we come over to Hwt-Horu. That's the Egyptian name. The Greek name is Hathor. So she's commonly known as Hathor, but why would we use Greek to describe Egyptian principles? It's a bit strange, and we lose a lot in translation. So Hwt-Horu is at 3. I'm putting this word fecundity with Hwt-Horu as a defining quality of 0.3. And fecundity is the ability to produce abundantly. So it's about abundant production, but the word, and if we look at the figure on the right there, the word and the figure are associated with these qualities of nurturing excellence and beauty. So what this does is it moves us beyond, I get frustrated in some Enneagram teaching is the Westernness of it. That we're in this, the way that it's taught is very much in a Western paradigm, and it's in a corporate paradigm. It's in a consumerist paradigm, and what Hwt-Horu enables for me is to kind of move away from that paradigm and understand 0.3 and type 3 and the heart center in a more holistic way. I think I was going to say on this slide as well, there's been some debate since the last session about how we use Egyptian symbology. So I just want to make it clear that when I'm talking about this, I'm not saying that the Egyptians knew and understood the Enneagram in the way that we know it, and they didn't know the Enneagram of personality in the way that we know it either. In fact, what I'm saying is the exact opposite. What I'm saying is, let's look at these concepts from ancient Egypt and let's bring them forward to now. Let's bring them to today, 2025. And if we apply these concepts in 2025 to the Enneagram, how can that help us understand the Enneagram better? How can it help us understand ourselves better? And how can it help us understand other people better? So I haven't seen any evidence that the Enneagram was used in ancient Egyptian times in the way that we use it, but we can, and it's incredibly helpful to bring insights from ancient Egypt forward to now, and that's what I'm doing with this work. So we're putting Hwt-Horu, Hathor, at 0.3. So she is the lady, the one of many names. Hwt-Horu, of all of the principles from ancient Egypt, has a lot of incarnations, a lot of ways that she turns up. And I've grouped some of the names to give you some of the ideas of what's associated with Hwt-Horu. So to do with the sky and cosmos, she's the lady of all, the lady of heaven, lady of stars, the golden one. And this time last year, Ingrid and I were in Egypt together, and we went to the temple of Hathor in Dendera. And it's an absolutely incredible place. The energetic power of that temple is so strong. Our driver dropped us off and said, "I'll pick you up in," I think it was 90 minutes, wasn't it, Ingrid? And 3.5 hours later, we were still there, messaging him saying, we will be here for at least another hour. But what's incredible about the temple of Hwt-Horu, the temple of Hathor at Dendera, is that it's a great big planetarium. It's all about measuring stars, and it's incredible. You know, when you go to Egypt, you pick up these kind of it seems like some, you know, it seems like a lack of correspondence where we go to the temple of Hwt-Horu, and it's all about stars and measuring the planets and measuring alignments, and there's a zodiac there. That's where the zodiac of Dendera comes from. So there's this association. There are more than the obvious associations, is what I want to say. Hwt-Horu's associated with motherhood, so the lady of life, the mother of mothers. That's a powerful epithet. The lady of the uterus, the lady of the sycamore. So we've got this connection with life very strongly, with nurturing and motherhood. And then Hwt-Horu is also the principle of arts and joy. So music, dance, song. She's also the principle of drunkenness. So the lady of love, the lady of joy, the lady of song, the Shantras of Amun. All of this is to give flavor, it's to give color to point 3 that I don't think that we can get from the traditional Western description of type 3. So here she is as a statement about Hwt-Horu on the left, and then here we see Hwt-Horu as she's often presented. This is the face of Hwt-Horu on the right, and as Russ Hudson points out, and others as well, this face of Hwt-Horu is the womb. It represents the womb. Can you see that? There are 2 ovaries. The ears are the 2 ovaries, and there's even a little egg in the ovaries, each one. And the throat, the neck, is the birth canal. So we've got this association with the feminine, with birth, with life, coming through Hwt-Horu. And the statement on the left in hieroglyphs, in Egyptian, it reads Hwt-Horu en Ankh. This means Hwt-Horu, Hathor creates life. So she's the seat of life. So what if we look at point 3 and the heart center as the seat of life? What can we learn from that? And maybe have a think about what that's bringing up for you as we talk about Hwt-Horu and the seat of life. So next, let's look at this symbol, because this is the hieroglyph for Hwt-Horu for Hathor, and it's a compound hieroglyph, which means it's just one hieroglyph for the whole word and the whole concept. It's all tied up in one hieroglyph. So what we're looking at here is the square is the Hut. That is the that's the house or a temple. And then inside the temple is Horu. This is Horus, the falcon. This represents our higher self. It represents our spirit. It represents our soul. The falcon flies above. It flies incredibly high and it has pinpoint vision. It's the fastest bird in the sky. When it dives, it locates on its prey, and it dives up to, I think it's about 200 miles an hour. It's incredibly quick. So have a look at just really take in that symbol, because what we're doing here is we're learning through different areas of the brain. If you look at the symbol, what's coming up for you, and maybe let's get a bit of feedback when we think of the higher self in the temple. What are you seeing? What's coming up for you as you think about the higher self being enclosed in that way? Ingrid, what are your thoughts? Oh, Chris, let's have Chris.
For me, it feels trapped in some way, restricted and restrained and held back.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's not flying. There's something quite restrictive about that image, isn't there? And of course, no matter how enlightened we are, our spirit is still enclosed in this vehicle of our body. And I wonder what that has to say about point 3 and the heart center. Anybody else? Any other observations about the yeah, Petra?
I'm just struck by the visual of it, that the squareness of the squares is kind of in contrast to the very non-linear lines of the bird, like just the roundness of the head and the wing and there's something for me in the contrast between this very linear square, very square, and then the bird that has a shape that's not predictable in that same way, that has a sort of irregularity to it.
Yeah. And I think that magnifies, this sense of kind of there's a restriction, and there's a paradox here, isn't there, between that? There's a juxtaposition between the two. Yeah. Thanks, Petra. And Joanne?
I'm struck by how the bird looks as if it's looking upwards, wanting to look out of the box. And in the top right, the smaller square I see as a window, and yet the bird is looking in the wrong direction. It should be looking out towards the window.
Yeah. Thanks, Joanne. So we might like to think about higher self, spirit, soul, and what it means to be restricted or encaptured within this physical vehicle that is our body. Chris, have you raised your hand again?
Yeah, so I don't know if I missed this. What's the smaller inner square for in the top right-hand corner?
Yeah, so the linear aspect of this hieroglyph is the glyph for a house or a temple. So there's nothing complicated about it. The outer is the kind of periphery of the space. Remember, Egypt's a hot place. A lot happens outdoors in Egypt, and you could see the smaller square as a building, or the actual temple, or the actual inside space within the outside boundaries of the area that's enclosed as a temple. So the boundary between inside and outside is less well defined sometimes in Egypt, because obviously it's so hot there a lot of the time. Not all the time. It'll be very cold in Cairo in January before. So this is an example of how one symbol, we could write and read a whole chapter about type 3 and the heart center in words, but one symbol can start to bring us much closer to a different idea than words can communicate. So we talked last time about Hwt at 0.6 being the objective, and we're talking here about Hwt-Horu at 0.3, the subjective. So it's all about concepts, emotional processing, purpose, meaning, identity. These are all intangibles that are very personal, and that's tied up with 0.3 and the heart center. It's also, and I've highlighted at the bottom, it's decision making. And this is from modern neuroscience, is that decisions are made in the limbic system, which is the emotional center of the brain. So people whose limbic system is damaged have struggled to make decisions, and they also struggle to feel emotions. So it's the same part of the brain in modern neuroscience that is saying that the emotional center is where we make decisions. So yeah, so this slide I wanted to put up, and Ingrid's been talking about this already, is really when a lot of us work in corporates or with corporate clients and in the West, it's fine to talk about the body and it's fine to talk about the mind, but we come to the 0.3, we come to the heart center, and we're talking about the subjective, and ultimately we're talking about soul and spirit. So it becomes more challenging in some ways to talk about this in a corporate environment in a way that makes sense. But I think, as this gives us a challenge as teachers, as coaches, to think about how we might use language 4.3 that opens the door for people who might identify as a type 3, and for all of the heart center, because it's so non-specific, or it's so non-objective in the way that it expresses itself. And of course, it is an intelligence center that is really important. We need the heart center, we need the subjective, we need the emotional, and this is just really to highlight that in a business environment, this can be the center that is A, lacking, and B, more difficult sometimes to speak about without going into the sort of like a spiritual area that we're talking about here. How are we doing for time? Good. So this is a bit more on that. We've got truth, we've got integration up at 0.9. We've got true knowledge on the left. This is left brain. It's logical, it's letters and numbers. It's the negative. What I mean by that is it's taking apart. It's analysis, it's understanding by cutting into pieces. It's centrifugal. It's the spreading apart. It's energetically pulling apart, and it's the masculine. And then we come over to the right side, 0.3. We've got the true heart. So it's the holistic. It's the right brain. It's the generative. It's the arts. It's the positive. It's the centripetal. It's the energy that brings things together. And it's the feminine. So again, we're not talking about physical gender here, obviously. All men have the feminine and the masculine, and all women have the masculine and the feminine. But it might be interesting, again, if you're 0.3, type 3, or if you're in the heart center and you identify as male, to think about your experience of this interaction. And then, as well, if you identify as female and you're in the head center, type 6, and the head center, what's your experience of being dominant in the head center? And I think there's some really interesting questions to explore there for ourselves and with our clients as well. So we're back to the more of the Western idea of point 3, which is the competitive achiever, the performer, the producer. I like the exemplar as well. Always got to be excellent at whatever they're doing. So the pathway for 3s to higher integration, taking Hwt-Horu obviously on the left there as some inspiration is to replenish the true heart. We were looking at the empty heart. Ingrid was talking about that empty heart and plugging that hole and filling up the heart, becoming a full person. Thinking about cosmic creativity, balancing efforting, that over efforting of 3 with allowing for natural growth and unfolding. Nature doesn't effort. A tree grows, a plant grows, a flower comes into bloom without effort. It's part of this natural growth, the natural coming into being that happens from point 3, the seat of life. And then from point 6, we can call in assistance and help to point 3, and doing that with trust and joyfulness. That's what we can bring in there. And then from point 9 is moving from disharmony, that disharmonious over-efforting, overworking of point 3 to the disharmonious doing, to a more harmonious sense of being. So I wanted to wrap this section up with this question for point 3 and for all of the heart-centered types. Am I creating life? Otto Scharmer gave this quote that I thought really perfectly captures 3, when he says that never in the history of the world has there been so much talent, intelligence, energy, and resources applied to producing results that no one in the world wants. And I think that is such a comment on point 3, type 3, and also generally what a lot of people are experiencing right now. And then Russ Hudson in 9 Gateways to Presence, he asks of 3s, what do I believe in? What do I want to dedicate myself to and dedicate all of my being and talent to support? And Hwt-Horu gives us a hint or a direction or a signpost. Hwt-Horu and Ankh. Hwt-Horu creates life. So a question for 3s. What am I doing? Am I efforting in service of my ego, or am I creating life in the very broadest sense of what that can mean? So that's the end of my section. I am going to start some PesaJet teachings. They'll be coming soon, so watch out for those. The true nature of the Enneagram. It's typology, but it's also the symbol and the system of the Enneagram. So it's bringing together Egyptology, the Enneagram. It's applied to now very much. And if you're interested to know more about that, email me at pesajet@authenticlifecompany.com. I'll be happy to send you more information about that. It's coming hopefully in March. Otherwise, I am an Enneagram coach and teacher for Enneagram coaching supervision. So my details are there on screen, and I'll hand back for any questions or comments. I can see Ingrid nodding.
I just wanted you not to unshare your slides. That was why I was interrupting. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Can you go back one slide, Rob?
Yeah.
Just the wondrousness of the hieroglyphs. Rob once told me that those waves are
The
like
N, yeah.
waves, like quantum physics, that kind of energetic movement in the cosmos. So And the circle, Rob, if you can just explain that circle with the lines quickly.
That's the ch sound, a bit like a loch in Scottish. It's a sieve. It's often described as a sieve or a filter of some kind.
Wow.
So we've got this. The ankh is the famous symbol there, which is just above where I've written life. And then the two symbols after it are part of the spelling of that. It's about filtering the transmission of the waves of cosmic energy. That's one way of looking at it.
There's a process in hypnotherapy where you go through a sieve in the bardo, like between life and death. You pass through a sieve and leave certain things behind before you come into this world. And
The symbol.
that's quite a beautiful thing. So I'm seeing like this giving of life, but you have to filter out what you remember from your previous life to enter the next one.
Yeah, and it links in with that kind of restriction, doesn't it? The filtering, the restriction of the falcon in the square space there. It's endlessly fascinating looking at the actual Egyptian hieroglyphs, and this is why it's so important to look at the Egyptian word rather than calling this goddess this Netta Hathor, because Hathor in Greek doesn't mean anything, whereas the Egyptian means the house of Horus, of Herut, the higher self. So we actually understand what they're talking about in the original Egyptian.
And again, the seeing as becomes being as. What if we walk away from tonight thinking about our heart as the temple of the higher self?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that organicity, it's organic. It's of nature inside the temple of our heart. I mean,
and I didn't mention actually, if we look at Hwt-Horu on the left, she's there with the sun, with Ra on top of her head. So and we often talk about the sun being in the heart center and shining out from the heart center, being the source of light. So we've got this, she's very clearly associated with the solar principle there, the source of life, the source of light coming from the heart center. And people often when the empty heart is filled up, people of all types often have a sense of warmth and light coming from this area of the body that's very much associated with being at higher integration and more engaged.
Thank you. That's so wonderful. So will you put your email address in the chat as well, Rob, so people can find it easily? And should we hand over to Sam?
Yeah.
Thank you. Shall I share my own slides, Ingrid? Is that going to be okay? Okay. So just before I share some slides, I would just like to give this a little frame. It's going to be a creative practice that offers you an opportunity to bring this home to yourself, to kind of take some of these threads and see where they can offer you some deeper sense of your heart space, and particularly this sense of the heart to be found at 3. So we're going to be working with some imagery and also some correspondence, so some sense of being in communication with the imagery, allowing to see what it has to say to you. And we're also going to be working with some objects and a little bit of journaling to kind of put all that together. So as a little segue in a moment, I'm going to invite you to stretch your legs to make sure you have a journal. If you would like to have a candle and create a little bit of a sense of that holy temple in your space, you can find a candle. And the other thing I would like to invite you to find is an object in your home, something hopefully you can hold within your hands, that is something that you are connected with in your heart, and something that has an integrity of form about itself, something that has a sense of it being contained in and of itself. Its value is in and of itself. So you may already know what you need to find. It might be in another room. Or you might want to just allow that to just have a little, when you have your little stretch of your legs, just wander around and see if it chooses you. So let's just pause the recording for, say, just 3 minutes while people just have a chance to stretch and get the thing.
Sorry, Sam, I didn't hit record when we came back, so we're just going to record the last part of the practice, okay?
So, in the image that you've landed with, that you've spent some time with, and if you're catching up on the recording here, just allow yourself to spend a few moments with this image, really deciding which image you belong with, which image is calling to you right now, and where in the image that you're going to spend some time corresponding. And then I'm going to ask you to do something quite unusual if you haven't done this before. I'm going to ask you to allow the image to have its own reality, have its own perspective and its own voice, and allow the image to share what it wants to speak to you. So using your journal, I'd like you to ask the image, who are you? And allow the image to answer from its I position in its own words. I am one who. And see what comes. See what it has to say. I am one who ... May have lots to say, it may just have a little, but see if you can give it a little nudge. See if it might want to say a bit more. And who are you? And the image says, I am one who ... And so that you really keep a sense of you on the one hand and the image on the other hand, ask the image, what do you want me, and put your name in the space. What do you want me, Sam, me, Ingrid, what do you want me to know about integrity? And see what the image says, again in its own words. I want you to know that ... Just check back in with the image and see if it wants you to know anything else. And then just thank this image for what it's offered you. And then I'd just like to invite you to come away from that image. And if you found an object in your space, the object that really had something held within its form that touched your heart, you're going to work with that now. And if you didn't, and you'd like to instead work with one of the other images, that's absolutely fine as well. So if you could take the image, take the object within your hands, and just feel its weight and its form and its substance, its temperature, your felt sense of it. Just look at it very closely at the same time as you're feeling it very closely, so that you're really noticing how your hands are in a way an extension of your heart. They're a place of giving and receiving. They're a place of touching, of being touched, of holding and being held. So in this sense that you're kind of holding hands with your object, noticing how the light falls on it, noticing something else that you haven't noticed yet, something about its detail. Ask this object now, what can you tell me about veracity? What can you tell me about veracity? And allow this to be a real interaction between you and this object in its wholeness and its integrity, in its sense of being contained within its form. And you may have always called this object something, but I'd like you to ask it if it has another name. So ask your object, what is your name? And allow it to tell you, my name is. And it might be the same name that you already knew it by, but it might be a different name. Now, if you could put your object to one side and thank it for what it's offered you. Let's check in with your candle again, just for a moment. And for the last piece of this practice, I'd like you just to breathe now quite consciously. Just allow your breath to be a way of self-remembering for a few moments, so that you come back into that sense of your embodied presence. Allow that breathing to connect you with your seatedness and your sense of being encased by this vehicle, a vehicle whose outer parameters are contained in this skin and whose inner pieces are held together by these amazing bones, this incredible skeletal frame. And just have a felt sense of this skin and bones and skeletal frame. Allow yourself just to move a little into it. Feel into that sense of being an embodied person in place, in time. And when that all feels nice and good and real and breathed into, I'd like to invite you just to soften back with that sense of the candlelight into your heart space. And see if you can invite that candlelight into your heart space now, so that it's shining around as a soft beam. Just seeing how you're doing in your heart, right here, right now. And you may have started off this with some surface reactivity. There may even be a little still there. Just see if you can breathe that soft beam of candlelight into a deeper sense of the inner chamber of your heart. And ask your heart space, what can you tell me about the wisdom of heart? What can you tell me about the wisdom of heart? And allow your heart to reply. What I can tell you, Sam, what I can tell you, Rob, about the wisdom of the heart right now is ... And allow your heart to tell you what it knows. And allow that to come in whatever form it comes. It might be a shape, it might be words, it might be a really strong sense of an image. It might be information that you need to know. When that feels complete, I'm going to allow a couple more minutes. But when that feels complete for you, just allow the next few moments just to be filled with that sense of that soft candlelight, and take a few moments just breathing with the candlelight as others finish listening to their hearts. And just thank your heart, make an inner gesture of appreciation for this incredible part of you that is deeply, intimately yours, but in other senses knows no bounds and is connected with the heart of the world and the heart of the universe. So I'm coming to the end of the practice, and in a moment, I'm just going to ask you a few questions about that, but I'm also going to put up a slide just about what I do. So it's on the screen. So at any point you can make any notes of any bits that are of interest to you. I hope you might like to be in touch.
Sam, can you put it on presenter mode so that we can see nicely?
Yes. Presenter mode. Okay.
The very bottom right of the screen, there's a little icon of like a pull down screen.
Is it a square with arrows in?
It's just on the left of the volume on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, it's the last.
That one. Yes.
Thank you very much. I got it. Okay. So, as I said before, this is something really of its own integrity. It's between you and your heart space, and between you and the imagery. It's not in any way intended to be for more than that, but also in the spirit of learning and sharing. If there is anything in that practice that feels like it is for sharing, this is an opportunity just to say a little bit about what that was for you, and if it enabled you maybe to join some dots with the rest of the content this evening. I'm just going to open it up in that way. So please, if there's anyone who would like to say anything.
Sam, I'll switch off the recording now so that
That's perfect, isn't it? Good call.
Bye everybody who might be watching the recording.
Yes. Bye-bye.